really sticks out. So if we do the same thing, this is the same situation, but this one is not zirconia. This one is Emax, lithium disilicate. Yeah? So lithium disilicate, you can see it matches much better. It's just more beautiful. So everybody wants to have more translucent zirconia. Who knows Swarovski? Who knows? Ladies? Ladies. I think these ladies, they only buy diamond. I think you don't want to have a fake diamond, because Swarovski is a fake diamond. Yeah? A fake diamond. Because Swarovski is zirconia. So why is this? Crystals. Very translucent, right? This Swarovski doesn't look like this. Huh? Imagine Swarovski would look like this. Nobody would buy it. But Swarovski looks like that. Very translucent. Why? Because this kind of zirconia has a different crystal. Yeah? Different shape. Not tetragonal, not monoclinic, but cubic. If you make a zirconia out of cubic polycrystals, it becomes translucent. Okay? So we want to have a little bit of this in our zirconia for the teeth. So we want to make the zirconia a little bit more translucent. Not like this. This would also not look good. Okay. So you can see this is the original zirconia. You can see with the full strength of 1200, you can see the crystals, very fine crystals. And this is actually 3YZ zirconia. That means we have about 3 mole percent of yttrium oxide inside this zirconia. Okay? 3 mole percent. So we have 100% of tetragonal polycrystals, which is very good for the strength, but not so good for aesthetics, because this material is quite opaque. Okay. So now if we increase yttrium oxide in this zirconia, like here, so we increase it, you can see the crystals are changing, yeah? Crystals becoming more large. Okay, here. So now we have 4 more percent, so more yttrium oxide in the material. And you can see now we are having a share of 25% of cubic polycrystals. Remember Swarovski? Swarovski is only cubic, more translucent, yeah? So now we have 25% of cubic, and the material becomes more translucent. However, it becomes also weaker, because from the 1200 we have now only 850. Okay? So if we want to make this material even more translucent, we can further increase the amount of yttrium oxide. Okay? Like here, you can see 5 YZ, so it's 5 mole percent of yttrium oxide. And you can see the crystals becoming larger, even larger than here, huh? Larger. Okay? And now we have a share of 50% of cubic crystal face. Yeah? 50%. So the material becomes even more translucent. But the strength, look at this. So from 850, we can further go down to 650. Yeah? So to summarize this, and so today we have all the three materials in the market. So we need to look at the material and select the right one. So to summarize this, if we have more cubic phase, it becomes more translucent, which is good for aesthetics, but it's not so good for the strength, because the material is becoming also weaker. Okay? Clear? It's clear as Swarovski? Good. All right, so, and you can see if we look at, if we compare now the different zirconia to Emax, the original Emax lithium disilicate, we see this fracture toughness and flexural strength, okay? So up here, this is the original, let's say, zirconia, the very strong zirconia, which is more opaque. So we have the very high flexural strength and fracture toughness. And if we really put a lot of yttrium oxide, much more than this one, the physical properties are decreasing. You can see, not so different from Emax. So these are the most translucent zirconia that are in the market, of 5YZ zirconia. More translucent, but regarding strength, not so much difference now to the Emax. Yeah. Okay. Good. So I would like to introduce to you two materials of Ivoclar, which I have experience with. It's called Emax Circat. This one is LT. So LT means that this is a 3YZ zirconia, not so translucent, but it has the full strength of 1,200 megapascals. And there's a new material called IPS Emax Circat Multi, MT Multi. So this one is multicolor and multi-translucency also, yeah? Because it consists of two raw powders, 4YZ and 5YZ. So you can see when you mill a crown out of this multi-MT material, you have a color gradient, yeah? You can see it's more opaque in the cervical area and more translucent in the incised edge. Yeah, you can see here different raw powders. For the cervical one, we have the 4YZ, and for the incisal one, where we need the translucency, we have a 5YZ zirconia, which means that we have 850 megapascals in the cervical and 650 megapascals on the incisal edge. Okay, so we can mill that out of the milling unit, and you can see now when the light comes from your direction, looks like this, but we can also bring the light actually from the incisal, and you can see we have more light penetration from the incisal edge, and we also can bring the light from the palatal side, where you can also see the difference here. Much more translucent in this area and more opaque in the cervical area. This is actually how the natural tooth is also done. Yeah. So we have more opacity, more chroma and color in the cervical area and more translucency in the incisal edge. And you can see when we expose the restorations to ultraviolet light, usually zirconia is not fluorescent. It's one of the disadvantages of zirconia is usually that they are not fluorescent. But what we can do is we can use a special glaze. So this one is a glaze that we can apply on top of this zirconia crowns, and this glaze is fluorescent. So it's called glaze fluo. So that makes it fluorescent. Okay. So you can see here the Circat MT Multi. You can see in the cervical incisal area. You can see the stripe. So it's higher translucency, and there's a dentin area is more opaque. And you can see the difference here between incisal and translucent incisal edge is not so high with some of the competitive materials. Okay. So now I would like to go a little bit through some clinical cases. You can see here, like this molar bridge, PFM bridge. So if you remove restoration, you can see now with the new material, we can, with the MT multi, we need to have for the bridge 1 millimeter of thickness with the multicolor zirconia. Then we can design this in the software. So this one at the chair side, yeah. But you can always order these kind of restorations from your lab if you don't have a a chairside system. You can see now this has been milled and stained and glazed. Okay, so this one is ready for cementation, but the cementation of zirconia is not so easy. Yeah, so it always requires the zirconia to be sandblasted. So before we do the cementation of zirconia, we need to sandblast it. If you receive your zirconia from the lab can sandblast it. Yeah, so you will receive the sandblasted zirconium oxide restoration, and now you can do a try-in. Okay. So this is the restoration. You can see. So we do a try-in, yeah, because you need to check the contact points, you need to check the occlusion and the articulation, and also you want to check the fit of your restoration. So during the try-in of your sandblasted zirconia, you will have contamination, right? Even if you isolate, but you have some sort of contamination, and the contamination is a problem. So how do you get rid of contamination? Don't use phosphoric acid, because phosphoric acid will block the adhesion to the zirconia. Yeah? So it's not good to use phosphoric acid on zirconia for cleaning. It's much better to use IvoClean. So I will explain to you a little bit more detail how this works, but IvoClean, you just apply for 20 seconds, you rinse it off, and then you have a clean surface. Yeah? Then you have a clean surface that you can bond to. Okay, now of course we want to achieve a chemical bond to the zirconia, yeah? So that we don't lose the restoration. And here what we need to do is we need to use material that contains MDP. You can see MDP is a chemical that has a strong bond to zirconia. So we can use MDP either in a special primer, what we have in monobond, for example, we have MDP inside, or you can also use it in the cement directly. In some of the cement, like Marteling speed or speed cement, there is already MDP inside already in the cement. Okay? So this one is Marteling speed, you know, that is a self-adhesive resin cement. So you don't need a bonding agent on the tooth, and you don't need a separate primer on the zirconia. You can directly inject the material inside the restoration, and then you seed it, and that's it. Okay. Now, of course, very important is that we can cure the material. However, because usually, you know, this material is dual curing. Dual curing material. Dual curing means light curing and self-curing. Light curing here, you can see there is not much light going through the zirconia because zirconia is not so translucent. So we are depending on a very good self-curing of the resin cement. So the question is, how much light is going through the zirconia? Not much. You can see we have a reduction between 70 and 100% of the light when we want to cure through zirconia. Okay? So if you are cementing zirconia, you must make sure that you are selecting a cement that has a very strong self-cure, because you cannot rely on the light, because the light, there's not much light going through here. Good. Okay, anyway, here we use Marteling speed, and then we just, this is just the application of a little bit of a fluoride, and you can see that's the situation. Okay. Good. So, I told you that today we don't want to use restorations that have a layering, yeah? Like a veneering ceramic. In the posterior, at least in the posterior, we want to focus on monolithic restorations, because we have seen a lot of chippings with zirconia restorations that have been layered. So you can see here in this study, we had up to 25% of chipping after 3 years. Of course, it's very annoying because you need to repair it. Patient comes back, you need to do some repair of the zirconia restoration, and so it's not very nice. So you can see here now, this one, okay, it's a little bit of a blurred picture, but we need the sound. Sound. So now this is a monolithic Emax crown. Okay? In the test to hammer lithium disilicate Emax.
The indentation in a way. That's pretty awesome.
So this one proves to be very resistant here. He cannot destroy this crown. And this is not zirconia, yeah? This is just Emax.
Do you think anybody can bite down that hard?
I don't think so. All it did was make a little black mark on the tooth from the middle.
So you can see this is a black mark from the hammer. And he's just continuing to even stronger hammer on this. So this is really, really good, and it has been also shown in the studies many times that Emax lithium disilicate is very, very robust. Yeah. So for example, if you look at Emax here, monolithic means there is no layering surrounding on the top, and here is zirconium oxide. This is very strong, but the problem is when we do a layering on the top of the zirconia, is that the veneering surrounding is very weak. So we are actually inducing a weak material on top of a very strong material. And you can see here, this test here, they actually hammer with this test here, with this metal, is hammering on the crown with increasing loads. So this is 700 newtons, and they go more than 1,000 newtons. And they do this for many, like for millions of cycles. So very, very tough test. And so the result here, in this test, sorry, I think I have the result is, so, and in this test it has been shown that Emax was more resistant compared to layered zirconia. Yeah? That's why we should do monolithic thing. So, and that's why the principal investigator, Professor Van Thompson, said that Emax lithium disilicate is by far the most robust ceramic system we have tested to date. Okay, so again, we would like to look at Emax. And Emax is lithium disilicate, as you know, but it offers two ways of production. So for the lab, it will be the press technology. So most of the labs are doing a press technology. Some of the labs are also milling this. You know, Emax CAD can be also produced in a CAD-CAM process. And also some dentists are using this in the dental office directly, because they can also mill it by themselves. So, but it's the same material. But the question is, of course, why do we have a blue block? Why? What's the reason? You know that we need to mill the material. So during milling, the material should not yet have the final strength. It should be a little bit softer so that we can easily mill it and quicker mill it. So now you can see this is the blue block. You can see this is the not yet lithium disilicate, but it's a precursor called lithium metasilicate crystal. So this is still quite weak. We still have only 130 megapascals for easy milling. But then you can see we can mill this crown easily. Within 10 minutes, we can mill it quickly. and then we have to crystallize it. So we have to place this blue crown into a furnace for crystallization. So now these crystals are growing and becoming more dense. Okay, like this. So after crystallization, you can see the crystals look very different. They're much larger. Now we are increasing the strength to 530 megapascals. So before, in the blue stage, it was only 130, and after crystallization, we are 530, and the crown becomes tooth-colored. And also we can glaze and stain at the same time. So now this looks quite good. So we can do this. Either the lab technician is doing this in the lab, or I can do it also chairside, yeah? Or my assistant can do this. So I can add some stains, I can do a little bit of a characterization, and I can put a glaze on top of this. And afterwards, you can see the crown looks very good, yeah? So from a blue block, we can achieve a very beautiful natural crown without any layering ceramic on the top. So this one is monolithic, which means it's very strong. So let's go through some clinical cases. Clinically, how I manage to do this chairside. So now a patient actually wants to get rid of the gold restorations. You can see here, when the patient smiled, you could always see the metal shining through here. So she wants to get rid of this. So if I remove all these restorations, I have some remnants of the cement and a little bit of decay. So what I do first is I want to sandblast this to know exactly how the situation looks like. So of course, when I'm sandblasting, I always apply rubber dam. Who is using rubber dam here? Who is using rubber dam? Only one, two. Only two people. So I understand those of you who don't use rubber dam, they don't like it, right? So I know a lot of dentists think it takes too long time. Yeah, it's a waste of time. But this one is different, okay? This one is called Ultra Dam Plus. And this one you can apply in half a minute. Okay? Half a minute. Would that be okay for you to apply in half a minute? Let's say 1 minute. Would that be acceptable? Okay, good. So you can see this one is flexible, right? It's a very flexible and three-dimensional rubber dam, which is very different from the standard rubber dam. And here you can see you can just easily apply this. For all your anteriors and premolars, you don't need even a clamp. Only for when you are also isolating, let's say, molars, then you need one clamp most of the time. But you can see, you can access everything. Patient cannot talk. Patient cannot rinse. You save a lot of time. Because sometimes patients want to rinse. They need to talk or something like that. So when you have a rubber dam in place, the patient is quiet and you can do your work. So at the end, with the rubber dam, you are more efficient. And it's also increasing the quality of the restoration. So, okay, you can see I've isolated this, and now I can sandblast this. So now this is after sandblasting, you can see it's more clean situation now. And I'm already bonding my restorations, yeah, you can see. Because why am I bonding now? I have my restoration not yet done, so I'm already bonding. What's that? It's called immediate dentine sealing. So after tooth preparation, I want to seal the dentine, because later on, maybe especially if you have a temporary stage, you don't want to have any contamination of your dentinal tubulus, because otherwise you might have some sensitivity problems. Who has sometimes sensitivity issues? I think most of us have some sensitivity problem sometimes. So this is a very good way of getting rid of this problem. So now, if we are sealing all the dentin now, later on there will be no sensitivity afterwards. It's called immediate dentin sealing, okay? There are different expressions for the same thing. Some people call it dual bonding technique, something like that, but it has been published by Pascal Magnier. So immediate dentin sealing means we apply a bonding agent right after tooth preparation. Okay? And this bonding agent is very helpful for this technique. It's called adhese universal, or another term, another product name is tetric N-bond universal. Right? It's the same product, but it comes out of this pen, you know, with a clicker. So you click and you have a little bit of bonding agent here. So this is a good technique. I really can recommend this to you. I have been doing this technique since 20 years now. 20 years I'm doing this. And I have no sensitivity problem after cementation. Guaranteed. Good. And if you have some undercuts now, very often, especially when you are removing old amalgams, you have undercuts, right? So you should block out the undercuts. If you don't do this, the dental technician will block out the undercut on the model, on the die. But then the problem is when you are getting it back, all the undercut will be filled with resin cement, which will then shrink. So it's not a good idea. It's better if you cut out if you block out the undercut with a resin. So for example, you can use a flowable. When you have some undercut here, you can spread the flowable inside the undercut and you cure it. And then before you take the impression or the scan, you can just finish your enamel that you don't have any composite on your margin. Okay? And this is a very good technique where you will not have any sensitivity. Okay, so you can see this with the flowable. You can of course cover this, but if you have undercuts, you can also spread the flowable into the undercut and then you block it out. So here, of course, when you do this with the composite here, you should make sure that you use a material that has a high radiopacity so that you can see this on your X-ray, right? Because if you have a thin layer of composite or anything, you need to make sure that it has a high radiopacity, and Ivoclar composite materials contain a special filler that makes the material visible on the X-ray. Yeah? Okay. And this material here is very special because before curing, this is a tetric N flow bulk fill. Before cure it, it's translucent. After cure it, it becomes opaque. Okay, it's just like dentin. So you can see you can block out. If you have some areas which are more dark, you can block it out with this flow. Okay, so this is the situation. So this is, I finished my enamel margin after immediate dentin sealing and blocking out the undercuts. I have a very, very clean situation now, okay? Now this is a perfect condition. I can take an impression or I can scan. If you are moving more into digital dentistry, the same thing is very important, that you always have you have a very clear situation, because especially the margins need to be captured either by the impression or by the scan. Okay, now of course we need to finish the enamel margin, that you don't have any bonding agent or composite on your margin. Okay, so these are the restoration. This is Emax, which I have milled. Chairside. You can see a little bit of characterization here. A little bit. Not too much. Don't make it dark, because otherwise patients don't love it. But just a little bit, yeah? Very decent. And from here, of course, you need to select the right translucency level, the right block. And if you give it to the lab, they will select for you. But in this case, it was the empty medium translucency block that I have used in this case. Okay, now we do a try-in. You can do just to check if the restoration looks good. Maybe in the posterior is maybe not so important, but when you are doing veneers, the anterior, it's very important that you are doing a try-in. Because if there is any mismatch of the color and the translucency, you can still redo it. But if you cement it from the first, like straight away, then it's too late. You cannot do anything anymore. So is it okay? It's okay for you like this? I think it's fine, yeah? So this one is the Virulink Aesthetic Try-In Neutral shade. So this is the standard shade. And then, of course, I need to bond to the restoration, and I need to bond to the tooth. So the standard, like conditioning of glass ceramics, the standard way is to use hydrofluoric acid in combination with a silane. So this is the standard procedure. But there is a new technique where you don't need hydrofluoric acid, and this is done with a special self-etching primer, and this is called monobond etch and prime. So we can use this monobond etch and prime here, and we just apply this on the inside of this restoration. Just scrub it in and leave it for another 40 seconds, rinse it off, and we're done. So you don't have to deal with hydrofluoric acid. So that makes the whole thing much easier and less dangerous, because hydrofluoric acid is very poisonous. So we rinse it off, okay? You can see we rinse that off. And we can now prepare the teeth. So actually I don't etch dentin anymore. I just etch enamel. Yeah? If you like, you can etch a dentin, but I stopped etching the dentin. And then we are using a bonding agent. In this case, my preferred bonding agent is Adhese Universal or Tetric N Bond Universal. So we scrub that in for at least 20 seconds. Scrub it in. And then we need to blow it out. We need to blow the solvent out of this bonding agent. Yeah? And then we need to light cure it before we cement the restorations. So we can now seed the restorations. So here we use Virulink Aesthetic. It's called Virulink Aesthetic DC, means dual curing. Okay, you can see that's the same shade that we have done the try-in. It's the neutral shade, and you can see now we have the excess material. So we need now to remove the excess before we actually light cure it. But I'll show you this step by step. But anyway, we check the contact points. You can see very good distribution of the contact points. And this is the final picture. So this is a very straightforward process. We have captured all margins. I have sealed the dentine, block out the undercuts. So this patient didn't have any sensitivity. Yeah? Because when you have sensitivity with this kind of restoration, you have a problem. Because patient paid a lot of money and he has pain after the treatment. It's very bad. So let's take all the efforts to avoid sensitivity issues. Okay, so before we go to the break, you can see, or maybe we can have a break now. According to the schedule is a break, and then I explain to you with some clinical cases the difference between Emax and some other competing material in the same category. Okay? I think it's time for a break. Good. So we have a coffee break now, and then let me